Hello, hello. So I have been using AI to do some deep research into plant breeding, specifically vegetables. I've got a couple projects that I'm going to be working on. I've got a micro dwarf tomato project that I'm going to be doing in my basement indoors over the fall and winter into next spring. If you don't know what micro dwarf tomatoes are, they are varieties of tomatoes that grow anywhere from like 3 to 10 inches tall. So like some of them are like literally this big, and they put on like 20 or 30 cherry tomatoes. So that'll be cool. My big project for next spring, I want to get like 17 varieties of tomato plants, and I'm gonna do like a survival of the fittest in my yard. I'll have like two of each, so like somewhere between 35 and 50 tomato plants, and then I'm going to have a small one with like 5 types of peppers as well. But the main focus is going to be the tomatoes. I'm going to see which ones do best in my yard as far as like diseases and pests go. And then, so that's the first year. And then the second year, I'm going to start intentionally breeding the best of the best tomatoes together to create my own variety that's adapted to my yard and my conditions. So that'll be cool. I also looked into trying to breed the fastest radish possible. So the fastest growing radish variety that I can find is 18 days. There's a couple of them. There's like at least 2 or 3 radish types that claim that they go from seed to pulling a radish out of the dirt in 18 days in ideal conditions. I think I could get it down to like, my goal would be like 2 weeks, I guess, like 14 days. So if I could cut 4 days off of the current fastest growing radish, I think that would be quite cool. But I just don't have the space to do the tomatoes and the radishes, so that's like a future thing, I guess. And I've already spent so much money on tomato seeds this year, so I don't want to do that. But yeah. That's a future thing. Radishes are also hard because you have to harvest the radish and see if it tastes good before it bolts and goes to seed. So I have to like figure out a way to like cut a little piece off of the radish and taste it, but then leave it in the ground to grow and let it bolt and save the seeds if it tastes good, and just rip it out if it doesn't taste good. So that is more complicated. The complicated thing about tomatoes is that they have perfect flowers. So the male and the females are like in the same flower cluster, and if you don't emasculate them, as they say, and like intentionally rip the male parts out of the flowers and pollinate them yourself, and there's a 95% chance that it just self-pollinates instead of like squash and melons and stuff, the bees pollinate them. So that's a thing. But anyways, let's just go through what I said to AI. You can get a better idea of like what my whole project is and stuff. So I said to the AI, I want you to gather all information necessary to make an ultimate guide to breeding tomatoes for the backyard home grower. I know how to cross-pollinate tomato flowers, and most of the basics that I can get from YouTube and beginner gardening books already. I'm more interested in the details of how to select for different traits and a full list of recessive versus dominant traits in tomato plants. Specifically, I'm planning to grow the following varieties, blah, blah, blah. Be interested to know what some of the most interesting crosses would be and how those would manifest in the tomatoes. So it asked me a couple questions. What are you primarily trying to breed for? Do you want information on both the fruit or the plant as well, like the leaf and disease resistance? Are you planning to stabilize new varieties or mainly exploring H1? F1 hybrid vigor? Do like a breeding calendar or timeline? Should we focus on traits or crosses with your listed varieties, or would you consider other ones? So I said, I'm looking to create my own ultra-resilient, locally adapted landrace variety of tomato. My primary inspiration is the work of Joseph Lofthouse. I want my tomatoes to be resistant to all typical tomato diseases and pests and growing issues. such as Fusarium, Oxysporum, Verticillum, blight, bacterial wilt, powdery mildew, sun-scald, cat-facing, mosaic virus, damping off, blossom end rot, fruit splitting, hornworm, fruit worms, aphids, whiteflies. This overall resistance should be a priority, although it will be naturally selected for since the plants will exhibit weakness to those things. Either won't produce fruit or I won't save seeds from them. The tomatoes also need to taste delicious because there's no point growing a hardy tomato if it doesn't taste good. Another trait that I want to prioritize is thick, sturdy trunks. I'd like a tomato variety that's entirely self-supporting and doesn't require any kind of staking or trellising. Fine with plants growing shorter and bushier if needed to support this. Anthocyanin coloration and interesting colors and striping in the fruit would be nice to have, but that's a lower priority. It'd be nice if the tomatoes had high nutritional value in terms of vitamins and minerals, but I don't think I could test for this as a home grower anyways, except for like using a Brix meter and stuff like that. Size and shape is not very important to me. I also don't care if the plants are determinate, indeterminate, or semi-determinate. I don't care about shelf life and storage. Early fruiting is nice to have, but not necessary. I want information on both the fruit and plant traits, including the tomato itself. I'm also interested in things like potato leaves, variegation, and other interesting potential traits. My plan is to stabilize at least one new variety down to at least the F8 generation. I may create multiple separate varieties if there are a few traits that I like, or I may put it all together into a single landrace. In year one, I'll simply be planting all of my varieties and seeing which do best with minimal inputs and saving seeds from the best plants and fruit. Then in year two, I'll begin breeding and crossing survivors. I'm not interested in timing guide. I consider this pretty basic growing information. Focus primarily on the traits and crosses within the varieties I've listed. If I'm missing something major in terms of traits that would help me achieve my goals, then I'd be open to growing another 2 or 3 varieties. For example, it might make sense for me to add a dwarf tomato to my lineup to achieve a tomato that doesn't require staking or support. Feel free to ask me other questions or clarification, blah, blah, blah. So it said, great, thanks for the clarification. I will put together a comprehensive guide to backyard tomato breeding focused on your goals of developing a resilient, self-supporting, and flavorful landrace variety. This will include a full list of dominant and recessive tomato traits, both fruit and plant traits, trait breakdown and analysis of the varieties you listed, breeding strategies, and selection advice tailored to your priorities, suggested crosses among your varieties that can produce interesting or advantageous combinations, a short list of 2 or 3 additional varieties that may meaningfully contribute to your goals, e.g. trunk support or added disease resistance. Okay. So it researched for 8 minutes, 44 sources, and 92 searches to come up with this ultimate backyard guide to tomato breeding for resilience and flavor. So it says, we are aiming to develop a locally adapted landrace that combines strong disease/pest resistance, excellent flavor, and sturdy plant habits. Using open-pollinated home varieties listed below, we'll select plants that survive with minimal inputs, eliminating weaklings, and intercross the best performers. Over successive generations, F1 to F8, we'll concentrate traits such as resistance genes, thick, vigorous stems to plants that can support themselves, and good taste. We'll also preserve interesting traits like unusual colors or leaf forms if they don't compromise vigor. Importantly, flavor and yield are polygenic and must be evaluated by taste and fruit counts in each generation. Key genetic traits, dominant versus recessive. Tomato traits follow Mendelian inheritance. For example, indeterminate growth is dominant over determinate or dwarf genes. Regular leaf is dominant over potato leaf or carrot leaf forms. Green foliage is dominant over variegated or yellow leaf forms. In fruits, small size is generally dominant to large size, and round or oblate shape is dominant to heart or paste-shaped fruits. Yellow skin fruits are dominant to clear skins, and red flesh or color is dominant to yellow, orange, green, or other flesh colors. Normal non-anthocyanin skin is dominant over blue or purple anthocyanin pigmentation. Striped skin patterns and deep flesh colors can act partially dominantly or require 2 genes, e.g. zebra striping requires AFT plus ATV, but in practice anthocyanin and bicolor traits usually appear when both parents carry them, often recessive in F2. Concise list of dominant recessive pairs are basically the same thing. So indeterminate or tall vining plants is dominant over semi-determinate or determinate. Dwarf is recessive. Determinate or dwarf plants stop vertical growth and fruit earlier. Yeah, I already went through all of those. Leaf form, leaf color, fruit size, fruit shape, skin color, flesh color. Anthocyanin, uniform ripening. Uniform full red is dominant genes. For green stripes or patching are recessive or partial. Okay, let's see here. Below are highlights of the listed varieties and a few suggested additions focusing on plant habit, disease, pest resistance, and fruit traits. Each offer useful genes or characteristics. So one variety of tomato that I'm growing is Mountain Merit. This is a determinate slicing tomato with excellent broad disease resistance. It carries a high resistance to Fusarium wilt, verticillum wilt tomato, spotted wilt virus plus gray leaf. It's moderately resistant to late blight. Fruits are medium red, perfect for slicing, and crack resistant. Plants are short, 3 to 4 feet tall, and strongly determinate. They all fruit at once. Celebrity, semi-determinate, bushy, great disease resistance, root knot nematodes, tobacco mosaic virus, cracking, Big Beef Plus, Big Hill, Orange Hill, Chariot. I don't really need to go through what all the resistances and characteristics are. Jagoda, Plum Regal, Mountain Magic, Blue Goldberry, Ixtepic, Highlands, Nahua Strawberry, Zatacapan, Ojo de Veneo, Gargamel. So basically I have 3 categories of tomatoes. I've got F1 hybrids, because if the parents do good and then I grow an F2 generation, the genes that will display themselves in the plants in the second generation are going to be really diverse from the parents, and I think that could be good to look for new traits. And then I've got kind of like these heirloom varieties, most of which have come from Joseph Lofthouse, so they're kind of already landrace. And then I've got like 5 plants that are from like the Andes in Peru and Mexico, and my goal with that is to get back to kind of what a tomato used to be before they got super inbred. So I'm going to kind of mix all those together, see which ones work the best, and then get them back out. Selecting for targets: disease, pest resistance. Nearly all listed commercial hybrids carry multiple resistance genes. By planting all parents, the survivors will naturally have strong resistance alleles. We should also note known resistance genes: V for verticillum, F, 1 and 2 for Fusarium, TM, H2 for TMV, SW for spotted wilt, TY for bacterial wilt, etc. Many V, F, N, T, and LB resistance alleles are dominant, so F1 screens will be effective. For example, Mountain Merit is highly resistant to Fusarium, verticillum, TSW, V, and gray leaf spot. Plum Regal carries late blight resistance, which is dominant. Crossing such hybrids together can pyramid resistances. So basically you can take one super resistant plant and another super resistant plant and stack them on top of each other, so then it's like twice as resistant, or it gets resistant to twice as many different things. So that's good. Among the progeny, select plants with best combined disease survival, e.g. no blight, no wilt. Compact, sturdy plants, thick stems, and self-supporting habit. Can come from short dwarf genetics or strong vigor. Dwarf genes are recessive, so F1 from a dwarf/tall cross will be tall. In F2, 25% will carry dwarf. To incorporate dwarf habit, we may need to introduce known dwarf varieties, see below, and select F2 progeny that remain under 3 to 4 feet tall with stout trunks. Note determinate habits. SP gene are also recessive to indeterminate. Many semi-dwarf or patio tomatoes like Tiny Tim, Windowbox, Roma, or newer F1s like Mountain Spring could be added to confer compactness. Over generations, select for thick, woody stems and surviving plants. Sometimes vigorous F1s with thick growth perform well, e.g. Gargamel, Ojo de Venado will favor their offspring if we can maintain shorter stature. Flavor and nutrition, we prioritize taste above all. Crossing a bland, disease-resistant line with a flavorful heirloom often yields middling fruit unless carefully selected. Since taste is multi-genetic, that means there's multiple genes that go into making it taste good. We must grow F2, F3 and conduct taste tests. For example, Jagoda and Ojo de Venado are known for high sweetness. Crossing them with high-yielding hybrids should allow us to select sweet offspring. Anthocyanin pigments, blue-purple add antioxidants. Gargamel and blue goldberry bring that trait, so we'll taste test antho versus non-antho siblings. We'll also save individuals with high vitamin C, often indicated with sharp acidity or deep red color in each generation. Seed saving will be from only the best tasting, most vigorous plants. Novel traits, color foliage. Potato leaf form is a recessive novelty trait. None of our current varieties are potato leaf, all are regular leaf. If potato leaf appears in F2, it indicates at least one parent was heterozygous, or we may have introduced potato leaf via a new cross. Potato leaf is often associated with larger fruits and sweeter flavors, so we might intentionally induce this by adding a known potato leaf variety like Brandywine. Variegated fruit or leaf, aka silvering, usually signals viral infection and isn't desirable, so we'll avoid that. We'll simply note any unexpected traits like pigmented fruit cracks, leaf variegation, and disregard those plants unless they survive well. Breeding strategy and crosses. In year 1, we plant all listed varieties with minimal care, no fungicides, minimal irrigation, and observe which survive and fruit best under local conditions. We'll pollinate or allow open pollination within among the survivors to generate F2 seed. Because we aim for diversity, a wide mesh of crosses is good. We should also isolate distinct crosses for control. For example, hand pollinate specific pairs in year 1 so we know their F1 progeny. Some promising F1 crosses to make in year 2 based on complementary traits include disease with flavor. So Celebrity has VF, TMV, and N resistant red slicer. Cross that with the Ojo de Venado, which is heat tolerant cherry tomato with great flavor. So this could yield a large, tasty cherry tomato with multi-disease resistance. Anthocyanin times sweet. So we could take a Gargamel with a Jagoda to combine purple streaking with sweetness. Produce a red-purple pointed fruit with a range of flavors. Multi-blight resistance. We talked about how a bunch of the F1s have resistances, and we could combine those together. Cool colors. So Celebrity and blue goldberry. You could end up with a red with a yellow-blue antho, possibly yielding new bicolors like orange and purple in F2 and F3. Fruit color is often polygenic, so F2 may segregate bright spots or shoulders. Crossing a big one with a cherry one to produce medium-sized fruits. If a dominant small times a big in combined vigor and maybe some cold hardiness in there as well. And then like crossing tall with dwarf. So I didn't pick any dwarf varieties so far, so I think I will get just a generally well-adapted regular sized plant, and then later on in this I would cross it with a dwarf somewhere farther down the line. In each cross, we'll monitor dominant versus recessive outcomes. For example, crossing a regular leaf with a potato leaf tester can confirm crosses. All true F1s will be regular leaf, since regular leaf is dominant. Similarly, to combine anthocyanin, both parents must contribute a recessive anthoallele. Breeding will involve large F2 populations and selection. Plant hundreds of F2 from each cross. I don't know if I can plant hundreds. I can probably do like 50 per like outside growing season, and then I can do like a couple dozen inside in the winter. But yeah, where was I with that? Cull weak, disease, or tasteless plants, record traits, e.g., know which F2 families show late blight tolerance, save seed from those. Each generation, we reconsolidate the top lines into a few subvarieties, carrying stacks of desired traits. Ultimately, we plan to stabilize lines by F7 to F8, so the selected plants breed true. Meanwhile, we maintain a mixed population, aka landrace, of all survivors to preserve broad adaptability. Additional varieties to consider. To achieve truly self-supporting compact plants, we may add dwarf or patio varieties known for short stature and strong stems. For example, Tiny Tim is a determinate 1 foot tall cherry. Window box Roma is a 4 foot determinate. Ildi is a 4 to 5 foot dwarf compact type. Their dwarf alleles are recessive, so an F1 with an indeterminate parent will be tall, but in F2 we can recover dwarf form. Adding 1 or 2 such varieties give us the dwarf genes fix in the population. Other special additions would be wild solanum species or selections to deter pests. If soil-borne issues are a problem, consider introducing lines with the TY1, TY3 virus gene BWR-12 bacterial wilt in future cycles. For extremely high nutrition, one might cross lines with selected for high lycopene or vitamins, but in practice, flavor-driven selection usually enriches nutrients. So the thing with dwarfs too is that you can select them super early on. So I could get like a tray of soil and put like 100 or 200 tomato seedlings in it, and I could just let them grow to the first set of true leaves and then pick out the ones that are like super tall and save the small ones, because all dwarf tomatoes, my understanding is that they have a leaf structure called rugose leaves, and this is like they're like wrinkly and kind of like leathery looking and super dark, and also they just grow super small. I'm growing micro dwarf tomatoes right now, so I can kind of know what they look like at the small stage. Conclusion and path moving forward. By starting with a diverse set of parents, modern hybrids and heirlooms, and rigorously selecting survivors, we employ nature's culling. Joseph Lofthouse's landrace approach advises planting mixed survivor seed each season, then selecting the best performers. In year 1, we'll evaluate all varieties. In year 2, we'll make the planned crosses among top performance, and by year 3 onwards, we grow F2 to F3 populations, always saving seed from the strongest, best-tasting plants. Over successive years, the lines will adapt to the local microclimate and disease pressures. By F8, each selected line should be stable, but we may still maintain a landrace population to buffer future variability. Throughout, we lean on known genetics, using dominant traits to identify hybrids, preserving recessives, and careful record keeping. The result will be 1 or more homebred tomato varieties combining the best traits of all parents: rock solid disease resistance, hearty vigor, and truly delicious fruit. So that is my outdoor tomato project for next spring. And then I also did the same thing for micro dwarf tomatoes. So my plan is to take the existing micro dwarf plants, which are like 3 to 10 inches tall, and see if I can make like nano dwarf, which would be a whole different category. So there's like indeterminate, determinate. Well, actually, those are separate categories. Let's just say like normal sized tomatoes, dwarf, micro dwarf, and then I'd like to create nano dwarfs, which would be like, I don't know, 2 to 5 inches tall. Because my setup right now, I've got like a mini greenhouse in the basement that's got lights. I think my racks have about 12 inches of room, but then the lights take up some space. So realistically, they only have like 10 inches to grow. If you want me to go through my deep research on micro dwarf tomato plants and talk about all the different mutations and genes that occur in microplants that help make them small, then I can go through that. But I'm already at like almost 25 minutes, so I think I'm going to cut this video here. But basically, it's a similar thing. There's like multiple different genes that you look for. So my theory is that if I can stack like 3 or 4 different dwarf tomato genes on top of each other, then I'll get a nano dwarf. We'll see how that goes. What else did I do? Yeah, eventually I want to make a micro dwarf tomato that has purple and yellow coloration. I think that would be cool. And then I did something with peppers as well, that I wanted to create a pepper landrace. But the main thing that I'm doing is the tomatoes. So that's it. My first time using deep research, so that was interesting that it actually does go into a fair amount of detail looking into like the recessive and dominant genes and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Maybe in the spring I will actually post a video showing all my plants in the garden once I've got them out. We'll see. But that's it for now.